Hi guys, welcome to Life Unfinished.
Hi guys.
I'm Toya.
I'm RJ.
So this is actually a continuation of our past video, so definitely go back and watch it if you haven't seen it. We had planned to do it all in one video, but we realized there was so much to say about the pros of marriage.
Yes.
So this is our cons of marriage.
Yes.
Part two, exactly, of that video. And we're just going to share the other side to marriage, because there's always a second side. But I do want you guys to keep in mind, like Ruth said in the past video, this is not like to scare you out of marriage. They're not necessarily bad things, but they're more challenging things that we do feel is important to address.
Yeah, and to share. So yeah.
Remember to like, share, and subscribe before you leave this video as well.
So con number one, and we're using the term con, but it doesn't mean like these are all horrible things. Challenge number one, for lack of better words. Challenge number one is having to consider someone else all the time.
Which might sound selfish, like duh, like of course to consider someone else, but it is easier said than done.
100%. Because sometimes it's not even always in a selfish way. Sometimes you just have to think, how is the other person going to think about this? And like, so let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So it's not always in the way of like, oh, well, I need to do this for my husband, or I need to pick this up for my husband. A simple thing is, I shared this example with you one time, and I said I had cooked and I had to leave for work, and like the food just finished before I left, so I didn't have time to cool down, so I couldn't put it in the fridge. I knew my husband was coming home, so I sent him a text. I was in the process of sending him a text to say, okay, can you put the food in the fridge when you get home? I have now learned from past experience that I have to be as detailed as possible with my husband, and it was squash that I had made. So I said, if I tell him, can you put the food in the fridge, he's literally going to pick up the squash and put it in the fridge and not cover it, like just put it right on the pan. Seriously? So I said, okay, can you cut it? No, did I say cut? No, I said, can you put the squash in a container and put it in the fridge when you get home? And then later on throughout the day, I was like, I didn't tell him to cut it. And I know he's going to take the whole squash as it is and just put it in the fridge. And it's like, it's simple, but it's like, those are ways you have to think about the other person and have to be considerate of how does this person live life? Because then those things can easily frustrate you. Because for me, it can make me feel like, oh, I have to tell you everything all the time. But like, it's a part of getting to know each other. Yeah. I have to understand how he interprets things, and he has to understand how I interpret things. And then with that knowledge, we act accordingly. So that's one of the ways that you definitely have to be considerate of the other person and cater your speech and the way you do things so that it works with the way that they process and receive information.
Yes. Like, this is so huge in my marriage. If I were to give a real life example, for me, I had dreams to go off to school of ministry and to travel in my young 20s and to do a lot of schooling, because at the time I was really passionate about education. I still am, but in a much different way than before, for sure. And then for my husband, he kind of had plans to do the same thing, but not really education-wise, but more business-wise. And but things like that, it doesn't mean you can't do it when you're married. You can absolutely do that when you're married, but you have to consider, does this work for the other person? If I'm going to go away for a year, what the heck is my spouse going to do? Should be without me for a year? And for some people that does work, but for most cases that's not an ideal situation, especially if you just got married. Maybe if you've been married for a while, then things like that aren't as like big of a deal, but most of the time your spouse does want you around. And so it's kind of like how when you have a child, to consider a babysitter before you go somewhere. It's similar in the sense where you, not that I'm saying your spouse is a baby. Wow. But no, really what I'm saying is like little plans change. Life plans change.
Yes, they do. Especially when you're younger, I feel like maybe they change more than when you're older.
Because you're still experiencing a lot of new things. You're still completing school. I know for, I don't know, you have been in school. You were in school when you were married. And I know a lot of people have, same with me actually. Well, yeah. And honestly, it seems like it's not a big deal, but it is.
It is.
Because maybe before you would be up till all hours of the night studying and stuff. Now you have to consider, I have to have quality time with this person. And when you're in exams mode, you don't really care about quality time with this person. And the stress of that, and it's just, and even the way you're responding in those seasons, you have to consider, is this hurting their feelings? Am I giving them enough attention? I haven't cooked in a whole week. Like, and then even for the person that's not in school, considering that you are in school, like little things like this don't really happen when you're getting married older, because you probably finished school a long time ago, right? Not always, but that's usually the case. So these are things that are very important to think about. If you're planning to live on the wild side and travel, sometimes your spouse fits into that life. You guys can do it together. Many times they don't. They have a job right there where you're living. So they can't just leave for 6-7 months and, you know, hop on a plane with you. So these are, for me, that was tough because I had a whole plan for my life. And I don't know why I never thought about how my spouse fit into it. And so did Samuel. Like, we both were just like, we were so excited to be young and, you know. And I'm not saying we're not going to do those things. We definitely are. But the path and the timing of doing those things
is different.
A lot different, for sure. And I think the second thing we had was career. Yeah, number 2.
Yeah. So actually, this kind of, it's good that we
ties
talk about
in
it
well.
now. Yeah, because it ties in well. And so I know for us, that was it has been a big challenge. And even now, it's still something that we're navigating. You've probably seen before that my husband is a musician. And before, when we had just met,
good one.
Yes. When we had just met, I was aspiring to be a doctor, not even just a doctor, to be a surgeon. And along the way, that changed.
Sorry, I'm laughing because that's so far from where she's at now.
Yeah, it is very far from
not
where
because
I am
of
now.
marriage, by the way. It's just happened
5 years later, yeah. And I say this to him. I said, if you had come at the end of the 5 years, you would have met me at how I am now, but because you came in the beginning, you saw like the transition.
Yeah, which is cool.
It's cool, but it was also hard for him. That was something that we had to talk about because like when I met you,
I was being a surgeon.
Yeah, I thought that this was what I was going to be getting essentially.
Yeah.
And so for him, he was looking forward to that stability of me having a job that came with benefits and like set hours or whatever. And that was important to him because he's a musician, and he's like, because I don't always have that stability, I was looking forward to you providing that in the marriage. And that was something that we had to talk about and navigate through. And so career-wise, it does pose a challenge, I think, when you're younger and you're still figuring out or changing or exploring what it is that you want to do in the future. And for him, even now, we've been married for 2 years and we've been together for 5, but I'm still learning what it looks like for him as a musician. Like, what does that look like? There are times when he gets opportunities to travel abroad, and my husband's like he just loves traveling, but he loves he'll just get up and go somewhere if he can and meet new friends. Like, he'll crash on someone's couch. He's that kind of person. Cool. I like to travel. I want to stay on a resort. So it's just different.
Silence.
And so I'm still learning what that looks like to support him as a musician in his career. And there are things that I haven't yet experienced. He's talked about before wanting to do a cruise ship and play on a cruise ship. That's something that we haven't run into yet, but it's different. Even if we've been married for 5 years, it's still something we've never had to go through, right? And so, yeah, career-wise, it definitely has its challenges, I feel like, when you're younger. Not that you can't have them when you get married older or later on, but I feel like it's probably more of a thing to be aware of when you're younger.
Sorry, guys, I was distracted. I was just like, oh, I want to give Ruthie a hug.
I don't like when she calls me Ruthie.
She's so cute.
At all.
With her little dreads and... Sorry, guys, I really love Ruth. But, yeah, that's huge. I know for Samuel and I, how that took a big place. So my goal is to be a lawyer. So I did come out of this before I was married. So it wasn't like it happened, during engagement or anything. But that is what he knew. And I always kind of wanted a really high-paying, really consistent, hardcore career. And what changed that for me was realizing that I wanted a big family, and that just did not fit into that at all. And he thought, he could just live the crazy wildlife like Clayton over here. And what I mean by that is lots of late nights and da-da-da-da. And then I got pregnant early, and as you guys know, it's been a complicated pregnancy, so I do need a lot more help than I thought I would. So that changes everything. And sometimes what happens too is the timing and the place of your career. So for example, Ruth mentioned a cruise ship, but that would mean he'd have to be away. Yeah. So now it's kind of is that something I can still do? Is that going to work in a marriage, right? And yeah, so there's things to think about. If you're very, very strong and I'm not changing my career, and I'm not saying that means you have to change your career, but consider that the way that it happens and the path to it might be very, very different. And be open to that. Sometimes it even means putting your career off. Yeah. Which is something that people don't really speak about, because maybe your career isn't going to make money in the beginning. It's more of like those careers that you invest in, you make money later on, which is pretty similar to my husband's career. It's like there's a lot that goes into building the business that he's building right now. But if you have bills and you have stuff to take care of, sometimes just putting that on hold or putting that to more of a part-time thing so that you can make that income. So these are things, I'm being honest with you guys, I did not think about. Before.
And I think even if you do think about them, to be honest, it is a different reality once you're living. Yeah, once you're living it, it's different because you won't think to talk about all the little things that come up in the moment. So when he's like, oh, okay, well, I got a call. I remember, I think it was last year when he went to Martinique, and it was like, it wasn't a huge amount of notice before he was going. And so I was like, okay, I don't remember if he had something else that weekend, but it was kind of like, hey, I really want to take this opportunity. And I was like, of course I wanted to take the opportunity, but I remember it was just like, I'm the person, if you give me notice, I'm almost good with anything. I just like to have notice so I can mentally prepare myself for whatever it's going to be. But that was something too that like, we're not going to think about that specific moment 3 years before we get married to talk about it. You know what I mean?
And if you can, teach me how. You're very advanced. Yeah. Which actually is a good segue to our point number 3, sacrifice.
So this is con number 3.
Yeah.
Or challenge number 3.
Yeah, because this is pretty much what we're talking about. There's so many aspects of sacrifice in marriage. It can be exhausting at first. Or it could be extremely traumatizing if you don't think that that's what marriage is about.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, if for real, marriage is about sex. Marriage is about what they can receive. It's more for a selfish desire.
Or it's about all the good things in life, like traveling and having all these experiences with your husband or your spouse.
Not being alone.
Yeah. And all those things, yes, you can for sure have all of those things, but they do come with things like sacrifice.
Yes, there's so much. I remember when we were going through premarital counseling, which we did for 2 years. Wow. That wasn't necessarily intentional, but it's kind of happened. We did it for 2 years. And honestly, guys, it caught me so off guard when the first question he asked us was, he said to Samuel, are you ready to die for her? And we're like, what kind of morbid question is this? What? But he went on to explain and basically said, like, before we talk about anything else, we can talk about sacrifice. Because if you guys are not in the maturity level and you're not in the spot to be willing to sacrifice and realize that sometimes it's giving up all that you want for this person, then you are not ready. And that was hard to start with, but that was a good thing to start with, because sometimes, and this is not a bad thing, sometimes you think you want to get married and then you realize you want to wait a bit, and that's perfectly fine. I really want to highlight that, because it's easy if a lot of people around you are getting married to feel like, oh, I want to get married too. That's a common thing that people do. Or if Ruth can do it, then I can do it. Absolutely. But if Ruth can do it at 22 doesn't mean you can do it at 22, right? And vice versa. So sometimes it's good to start with the hard questions. Another thing he said to us is, what's 5 things you absolutely hate about this person? And we're like, huh? I was like, this is a weird counseling, but it was really good. I think you did the same counseling actually. And then he said, now think about the fact that those things might never change. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because it's not like things you don't like, things you hate. And it sounds like a weird question, but it's good because you have to sacrifice the fact that you want those things changed, because that's just a part of who they are. Like some things that's just how we're made, right? It's not necessarily bad things, just something that is not the same as somebody else. So
it could be your spouse's height, it could be their weight. It could be little bad habits, maybe like physical things that they do in the house or maybe don't do. It could be personality traits, the way they say things or the way they think about something. It could be anything, anything at all. And you definitely have to be ready. You have to be aware that, yes, these things might never change. Because sometimes I think we can also go into it thinking, well, those will get better over time.
Or I can change this person.
Yeah, but they might not. And just last thing I want to say about sacrifice is that I think it's so important to talk about sacrifice with your spouse. And what I mean by that is if you are making a sacrifice for your family, I do think that you guys should both be on the same page with it. So if I'm deciding I'm not going to go, for example, to do my master's right now, I'm just going to wait so that, I don't know, we can start having children. And then after our first child turns 5, I'll go back to do my master's. I should not be making that decision by myself. Reason being, Because then when the child is 2 years old and I'm struggling and I'm sleep deprived and I'm upset and angry and I'm thinking, I cannot believe, like, look at all the sacrifice I'm making for Clayton, for my husband and for this family. And like, meanwhile, he's living life not even knowing that that's why I'm not going to school. Because maybe I just said, oh, I'll go later. But in my head, I'm thinking, well, I'm sacrificing.
I have a choice.
Yeah. And so it's so important to talk about that because it can lead to bitterness. Because you feel like you're giving up something that your spouse is not even aware of that you're doing. So very, very important. Clay and I had that discussion recently. And it was eye-opening for me because he felt like he was sacrificing something that I was not aware of at all. But I was noticing that I wasn't seeing him doing
that thing.
He wasn't doing that thing anymore. And one time that actually wasn't even a conversation. It stemmed from an argument about something else. And I was like, and you're not even doing this anymore. And we talked about it, and I had no idea that for him, he's like, well, I'm not doing it because I need to make sure that we're provided for, like to make sure that we're taken care of, and I don't feel like I can comfortably pursue this avenue while making sure we're taken care of. So it was so eye-opening for me, and for us, it was good to then set that ground rule and say, we need to discuss, we both need to agree on the sacrifices that we're making. Otherwise, there's no point of doing it, really.
And say what they are. Because I think we often think, well, obviously I'm sacrificing for you. Can't you see that? But the reality is, most of the time we have no idea people are sacrificing for us. And you might seem like, how do you know your spouse is not? But believe it or not, you can have no idea that they are. Especially because they may not be like super down about it. It might just be like they did it and they don't even think about that they did it. So yeah, saying like, I want you to know I feel like I'm sacrificing this or I'm letting go of this is crucial. Sam and I actually just had a conversation just like that where I realized he stopped doing something and I was like, why don't you do it? I thought he just didn't want to do it anymore. I don't know. I didn't think much of it. I noticed it, but I didn't think much of it. And he was like, no, like I gotta work. And to be honest, it hurt. It hurt a lot because I'm like, oh, but I want you to do it. And he's like, it's not the time. That's just what it is. And that for me was hard because for me, I'm always like, follow your dreams, go for people. But the reality is sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't. So, but you know what, guys? I think we really summed up most of the points. As much as we had 7, like we can read them to you, but I think we kind of like intertwined a lot of them into our discussion. Yeah. So like number 1 was consideration of someone else. Number 2 was more responsibility. Career was number 3. Sacrifice was number 4. Relationship changes is number 5, which we spoke about. Availability, number 6. And we'll put these on the screen for you. Or in our comments because you might want to write them down, talk about them with your partner. And sharing, like cohabitation. So I think we pretty much talked about all of them because that's cohabitation is a part of sacrifice. Like I now share a space with you. I never used to like sleeping with people, like meaning like sleeping, literally in sleeping. Bed, It sounded weird. In the same bed. I had to learn to do that, and it's still tough for me. But you learn to actually kind of like it after a while. You're like, oh, this is nice. So
sometimes,
Clayton's
still working on that. He likes to sleep diagonally in the bed, which I
still think is small, but it's a big deal. Yeah,
he does that. I feel like it's a psychological thing.
Yeah, that's super weird.
It's just
But if you've been doing that your whole life, then you never have to think about anyone besides you, right? And then some of us grew up in houses where we were sharing rooms, so like that might not be a hard thing for you to do at all. Whereas I was never sharing a room; I always had my own room. So. Yeah, I think we've touched on pretty much everything. But if there is anything we've mentioned that you feel like you want to hear more about, let us know for sure. Yeah. We'd love to talk about it. And we want to hear your thoughts too. Like, are there questions that you have for us? And be as real as you want to be. Like, what are some of the perks of marriage? Or is this hard? Or anything you're afraid of? And we both, like we said, we had exceptional counseling. So we could also refer you if you're interested in that.
And also we meant to mention this earlier, but I got married at 22 and Toy got married at 23.
No, I got married at 22.
Oh, at 20. Yes, you did. Yeah, at 22. So I didn't realize that.
I didn't know we did that. But I turned 23 like 2 days later or something like that. Yeah. Yeah,
so we both got married at 22. It's funny. Yeah, we meant to mention that earlier, but we forgot. So just in case you're wondering. Wanted to share that with you guys. Like Toya said, if you have any questions at all, or maybe if this triggers something for you that you want to ask a question about or you want us to do a video about, definitely just leave it in the comments. So we do read them and we will get back to you and definitely take them into consideration. So remember to subscribe, to share, to comment, to like the video. Thank you guys so much for your support. We really do enjoy doing this with and for you guys. So we will see you later.
Bye guys, love you.